So, welcome to the data science with our class. Uh, in our earlier discussion, we were talking about the basic definition of data science, where we were calling data science as an interdisciplinary field. So, the basic intention was to move this with a word called as structured data and unstructured data. From these structured data and unstructured data, we need to get valuable insights. So that was the only intention uh, uh, to apply across various domains to extract the knowledge and quick insights for the data. So mostly when coming to the definition part, data science, it is going to be related to either data mining, machine algorithms, machine learning algorithms, and big data. So here in this diagram, you can see data science here as the intersection of the Venn diagram, where it is going to have a lot of techniques right from computer science, machine learning, mathematics and statistics, traditional research, software developments, business domains, etc. So when we take up the two words, one we are going to call it as a structured data, two we are going to call it as an unstructured data. In that case, what we are going to impend was when we are going to say it is a structured data, the thing was data is going to be arranged in form of rows and columns. But when we are going to take it as an unstructured data, then the tweets, the Twitter tweets, the WhatsApp posts, so all type of social media data, they are not directly put on a rows and column format. So that is the reason why we are going to call that thing as an unstructured data. So valuable insights has to be taken up, has to be analyzed right uh, from both structured and unstructured data. So this will be the fundamental aim why we are going to opt out these subjects. So my earlier discussion, we were talking about the top 10 websites for the data science, where we call Kaggle or a Coursera, a Umidi or an edXR. So these are some of the prominent websites, and mostly the skills to acquire knowledge for the data science will be the probability and statistics, the linear algebra, the Python programming and R programming, and many more. So, but for this curriculum, we are now limiting our scope towards the R programming language as part of our course. So we have already taken up, there are uh, 10 prominent algorithms which we are going to take up as part of our course. That it is going to be either a linear regression, logistic regression, k-means algorithm, principal component analysis, support vector machine, decision trees, random forest, nav-based artificial neural networks, and boosting algorithms, etc. So these are some of the topmost algorithms which are prominent and plays a vital role for this data sciences. So what will be the job opportunities? What will be the top 10 roles for this data science? So there we can see that data scientists will be one of the prominent role. Similarly, a decision maker, an analyzer, machine learning engineer, data engineer, researcher. So there will be a lot of opportunities if we are going to take up the career for the um, data science. So the top 10 industries which are prominently using the data science will be uh, the healthcare, the e-commerce, the manufacturing, the transport, banking, finance. So every domain is going to have a specific set of inputs to uh, bring actionable insights and to increase their business. So this is where the data science is going to have its prominence. So the applications we were mentioning at this point of time, and Okay, fine. So when we move to the lab part, etc., we need to work on some data sets to understand the data, to pre-process the data, to apply some algorithms for the data. So for all these, we need to have some data sets. So collection of data, we are putting this in an organized form. So where we can get this data um, from Kaggle or from UCI data sets or GitHub. So these are most prominent way of using the data sets, etc. So as mentioned, we mean to say that data science, it is going to be blended with a lot of tools, algorithms, machine learning, and the holistic intention was to discover the hidden patterns in the raw data. So this was the foremost intention of why we are going to bring this data science into picture. So when we are going to call this as a word of data science, the two main or primary objective was just to make decisions, just to make some predictions over the things. So the three main aspects what you can look up from this diagram was one, we are going to say know what we know, two, knowing what we don't know, and third thing, not knowing what we don't know. So the way in which the data scientist will put his usage, put his algorithms will be one, we can call it as a descriptive way. Two, we are going to call it as a predictive way. So when we are going to say it is a predictive way, again, there will be two intentions. One, we call it as correlation. Two, we are going to call it as causation. So these three are going to come into prominence along with the machine learning algorithms. So uh, correlation, causation, prediction. So these are some of the prominent terms what we have to come across. So in our future discussions, we will have a glimpse of what exactly these terms are doing it, that we are going to understand. So as mentioned, there are a lot of business domains where people are making money using the data science. So that will be a travel, a healthcare, a sales, an insurance, automation, or marketing, or the social media. So these are some of the areas where prominently data science is going to have its impact over it. So now coming to the pretty interesting part of the data science. So this is what we are going to call it as a life cycle of data science. We are going to call here as a life cycle of data science. So the life cycle of data science is going to move up with one, we are going to call the first stage as a discovery. Two, we are going to call this one as data preparation. Third, we are going to call it as model planning. Fourth one, we are going to call here as a model building. Fifth one, we are going to call it as operationalization. And sixth one, we are going to call here as a communication of results. So all these six, they are going to have feedback, they do relate with one phase to another phase. So you can see what is feedback here was first phase talking to second phase talking to first phase. So both, they have a two-way handshaking logic. So both phases are going to be interlinked with one another. But when we are going to talk about the data mining, we have a knowledge decision in discovery where it will be a straight inclined way and there won't be any communication between the phases. So this was the main difference between the architecture what we are going to understand at this point of time. So the core contents, one, we are going to call it as discovery. Two, we are going to call it as data pre-processing. Three, we are going to call it as model planning. Fourth one, we are going to call it as model building. Fifth one, we are going to call it as operationalize. And sixth one, we are going to call it as communication. So all these six phases are going to be interconnected with one another. So Coming to the very first and prominent aspect, that is what we are going to call here as a life cycle of data science. So when we are going to say it is a life cycle of data science, the first and foremost phase was we are going to have a discovery. So discovery is the very first thing what we are going to say, that we talk with the business experts, we understand the business problem, we formulate hypothesis. So whether H0, H1, whether to take up a alternate hypothesis, whether to take up a H0. So in this way, we need to move with the, either to accept the hypothesis, whether to reject the null hypothesis. So we that all understanding uh, will take up at the very first stage. So that is what we are going to call here as a discovery stage. That is what we are going to call it as discovery stage. So in this discovery state, the most important thing was we work like a project there. We gather requirements, we gather specifications, then we generate the budget. So in this way, we are going to work with the each and every phase. So this was the foremost understanding what we are going to do this in phase one. Now coming to the second phase, that is we have the second part of the life cycle, we are going to call it as data preparation. So in this data preparation, what we are going to talk was we need to model the data. So in order to model the data, we need to see whether the data was totally structured or not. So before we are going to have prior understanding of doing modeling, first of all, we need to pre-process the data. So when we have to pre-process the data, we should see that there are no errors, there are no virus, there are no troubleshooting, there is no bugs, and the data has correlated with all its fields. So there are multiple integration among the fields. So everything is in a workable state. So thereby we are going to put up the model. So how can I do that all aspect? So you can do that all aspect with a way what we are going to call here was ETLT. Here we are going to call as ET and LT. So when we are going to call it as ET and LT, we call this one as extraction, we call it as transformation, we call it as loading, then we call it as transformation. So when we study about the data mining, we call it as only ETL. We call it as ETL process. But now in the data science, that ETL process has been renamed here. Here we are going to call it as ETLT. One, we call it as extraction. Two, we are going to call it as transformation. Three, we are going to call it as loading. Fourth one, we are going to call it as transformation. So all these items, they are going to be put together. Then we say it is a way we call it as a sandbox, or we can call it as a block box there. So all these phases are part of data preparation. Once these phases are through, in then only you can send it to the next uh, level. So we call that next level as informed, it is going to be called as model planning. So first one, we talked about null hypothesis, we talked about alternate hypothesis, understanding the business problem domain, so raising the budget, gathering specifications. So all this will be part of the discovery process. Second thing, we are going to extend the ETL process. Instead of ETL, here we are going to name it as ETLT. So in this ETLT, what will be the contents? They are going to be: one, we call it as extract; two, we are going to call it as transfer; three, we are going to call it as loading; fourth, we are going to call it as transformation. So after these two phases, we do have the third phase. We do have the third phase. So what will be the third phase? So in this third phase, we are going to call this one as model planning. We are going to call this third phase as model planning. So in this model planning, the main intention was we need to determine what language I should use, what technique I should use, what methods I should use. So it can be understood when we have a data and we were able to correlate the data, when we were able to establish relationship among the data, so then only it is going to be determined. So until unless we understand the variables, we understand the relationship among the variables, what type of algorithms, what type of methods, what type of techniques we need to use, that can be at a time understood. So for that, we need to have a relationship between the variables. Next comes the explanatory data analysis. So in this exploratory data analysis, the first and foremost intention was we need to have statistical formulas, we need to have a visualization tool. So when we are going to do with the visualization, we will put the initial state of a database or the data set in form of visualization. We put a scatter plot, we put a bar plot, understand how the stretch of the data is there. Even we will go up with a box plot, and then we will understand what is the first quantile, second quantile, what is Q3, what is min, mode, median. So everything in the data is going to be understood before we are going to make a model planning. So or it is going to completely support up such type of model planning capabilities, and it is going to provide a good environment with this various tools. So along with the R, we do have the advanced SQL, the Oracle is going to provide, and there are some more aspects such as SAS, etc. So these will be some of the tools giving up for the life cycle of database. So today we will conclude our class. Up to now we have taken only first, second and third phases of which is the data science life cycle. So in our next class we will continue with the next three phases, 4, 5 and 6. Okay. So today I will stop my class here at this point of time. So I will end my class today.